talented
or smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I am here with a brand new Underrated Gems episode. And this Underrated Gems episode is going to be for the follow-up to the movie I reviewed for the last Underrated Gems episode last week. It was a sequel that was released in summer 2002, and while it got better reviews than the first one, it was not as big of a hit at the box office as the first. In fact, it kind of bombed. And this sequel did not deserve to bomb. And that film is going to be for none other than 2002's live-action sequel, Stuart Little 2. Released in July 2002. And, was this directed by the same guy, or was it... Oh, yeah. It was directed by Rob Minkoff. Again. Much like with the first one. And then, sadly, we all know he went on to do that shitty Haunted Mansion film the very next year. After this. So anyway, what's this film about? Well, ever since being adopted by the Littles in the first film, Stuart's mother has been overprotective of Stuart himself, especially when he narrowly escapes injury in a soccer game after George kicks him with the ball into the goal net, but at least wins him and their team the game. His big brother George has also made a new friend named Will, so Stuart is now feeling lonely. Eventually, one day happens on his way home from school. He rescues a canary named Margalo from a falcon, and she temporarily stays with the Littles. One day, Margalo is just nowhere to be found, having disappeared. So Stuart and Snowball set out across the city to find her while George covers for Stuart. And this is the first time George has had to lie. So, pretty much, yeah. So, how was this made? Well, we all know Stuart Little 1 was a box office success with $300 million worldwide and a $133 million budget. So, of course, a sequel was going to end up happening regardless. And of course, filming began in both New York City and Culver City, California on March 5th, 2001, and lasted until June of that year. And also after the 9/11 attacks, parts of the Twin Towers soon ended up having to get digitally removed and scenes were reshot. And although this is a sequel to the 1999 film, Stuart Little, the plot of the sequel, though, bears a slight bit more semblance to the original novel by E.B. White, in which Stuart and Snowball meet a canary named Margalo, and Margalo ends up leaving the house, and Stuart goes and sets off to find her. So after the film was shot and marketed, Stuart Little 2 premiered in Westwood on July 14, 2002, and would go on to be released in theaters for the rest of North America and the United Kingdom on July 19th by Columbia Pictures. At the box office, unlike the $300 million gross earned by Stuart Little 1, Stuart Little 2 sadly ended up earning a pretty abysmal $170 million worldwide gross on a $120 million budget. And the weirdest thing is, though, despite that, it received much better reviews than the first. The first had like a 67%. Stuart Little 2 had an 81. And sadly, it would go on to be followed up by a shitty third film in 2005 that got dumped direct to DVD and was completely animated. and bear little connection to these first two. Now, as for my reaction to this movie, well, I do like the first one, but I honestly feel like Stuart Little 2 is the superior, better film. Because in this one, I feel like the Little family and the characters in general get better development as characters. Stuart actually gets more to do in this movie and its sequel. Snowbell's definitely more likable here. He's no longer the dick he was in the first film. The villain is way more memorable. Falcon is a much more memorable villain than Smokey. The love interest, Margalo, is even likable. And the story and finale are even more exciting than the first one. Or aka the climax is even more epic. I like this movie better than the first one. And that's definitely a high compliment because I did enjoy the original film. As good as that was, this is just better. The voiceovers are really excellent, with Nathan Lane having the best lines as Snowball the cat. In this one, he was just much more hilarious line after line. And the film once again features great colors, and it's like a virtual rainbow of them, especially with some of the inventive rooms of the Little House. The parents once again were even super nice and very likable characters. It's really enjoyable to watch Gina Davis and Hugh Laurie play this old-fashioned Leave It to Beaver type couple. It has no objectionable material and leaves you with a nice feeling. There's more animated films or animated real-life combinations like this that advertise family-friendly viewing around the 2000s, but they didn't really deliver. They would often quickly sneak in sexual innuendos and the like. But here, unlike most of the stupid sex jokes that animated films try to copy off of Shrek's success, the innuendos in these two movies are actually innocent and very light. Here. Specifically, like some prime examples of innuendos in here are where Snowball and Stuart's little dialogue together during the time they're in New York. I gotta go to the bathroom, and Stuart's like, there's the alley there, and Snowball's pretty much like, let me tell you something. I'm a house cat, and we're mysterious creatures, and we don't just yell bombs away and go wherever we want to go. It's actually an adult joke done right there. And this movie, it may also be a bit shorter and fast-paced than the first movie, yet it has more funnier moments. And if it's remarks made by beloved Persian white cat Snowbell, the story even gets this new canary friend, and their relationship named Margalo, and the relationship they have is really smooth. Even though Stuart's literally unaware that Margalo is used as a pawn thief for the Brick Falcon, is much suitably evil compared to Smokey the Alley Cat from the first movie. And Falcon's even voiced by the legend himself, James Woods. AKA the very guy who voiced Hercules. The guy who voiced Hades in Hercules. The villain in Hercules from 1997, which I think is an underrated Disney film. And did voice the antagonist from that Recess film adaptation, Disney's Recess Schools Out. And here, so I really like they got him to voice the villain Falcon. Because I don't think anyone else would have got Falcon better than James Woods. Here, and in terms of new elements, not only Stuart, his brother George even has this new friend named Will. And both George and Stuart get this new infant sister named Martha, who's kind of like the Maggie Simpson of the movie, who's just not given any words until the end of the movie anyways. And I hate to say this, I get this Martha character's just a toddler, but she's just kind of forgettable in here. Because she's just kind of there as the infant-ness. Because, some forgettable moments here, like when Stuart crashed the plane in the park, Martha's not even with her parents when they chase after Stuart. Unless they literally left her in the house with another family member for babysitting, but they were only gone for a few seconds, so I don't think that'd be easy to do. And the main theme Stuart Little 2 tries to explore, however, are not really about doing anything you want to do, and provide that being small isn't a limitation but a welcome challenge. Kind of like the first one, but it's more about siblings that drift away from each other. Stuart's older brother George is beginning to spend more time with his friends rather than his own brother Stuart, which is a natural part of life. And it's heartbreaking to the mouse himself. He begins to just view himself as just the pest, and that's the thing. Like, that's the thing, though. These two movies had a life message here. This one did a more, that's kind of the same message as the first one, but it's done in a more realistic kind of way. Here, this kind of really, they did really good teaching the values of, like, eventually, like, growing up and drifting apart here. Like, that's the thing I miss with certain family films. Like, back then, they actually were not afraid to tell about real life. And these movies exactly do that. Here. There's no stupid political crap, no stupid woke agendas. Here, no. There was none of that back then. And we all know, like, in this movie, like, Stuart befriends this yellow canary named Margalo, whom he rescued after seeing her being, well, what he thought was pursued by a falcon in the sky, but it turns out, though, Margalo was in cahoots with the falcon, and their chase was obviously staged to steal valuables from homes all across New York City. The little Margalo keeps that secret away from Stuart. She discovers how kind of gentle he really is, and I'll get to her in a little bit, though, but and we all know, yeah, Stuart Little 2 is not a very particularly compelling or very life-affirming film, but it's a genial, warm picture, great computer effects, yet subtle themes or silly relationships, and a plethora of jokes and kids and adults will find pleasant and joyful. And the characters are all brilliant. Like, Stuart and Margalo's chemistry is just so sweet and enjoyable. Here, like, it doesn't seem like just force. She's not all forced to be just a love interest. And here, like, no. I really feel like Margalo's actually feels like an actual character who actually plays a role in here. Actually just is more than just kind of a love interest, and it kind of helps provide the whole message of the film, where telling Stuart that he's as big as he feels, where Stuart thinks like no one thinks that is too big for anything in there. And Snowbell the cat, very improved here. The first one, he was wanting to eat Stuart, get rid of him in the first one. Now he's one of his friends in the sequel. And it's all good. And I think the chemistry between... And I do enjoy the chemistry Stuart and Snowbell have together. Especially when they embark on the Newark adventure to go get Margalo back. With no one else but them, there's a lot of friendship going on here. And it's very great that Snowbell always has Stuart's back in this movie. Like when the other cat in the restaurant wants to eat him, well, yeah, guys, you remember Monty from the first film? He comes back for a cameo in this, and apparently Monty kind of seems like he's learned nothing from being knocked into the river. But it seems like him and Snowbell made up, and we're on some good terms, and don't seem like they hate each other. But shouldn't Monty have learned from getting knocked into the water with the other cats that he's not allowed to eat Stuart's? Because he still wants to eat Stuart's, but Snowbell tells him no. So I don't know. So I really think Monty could have learned his lesson there. And Stuart's personality even widened. Like, he's not only the sweet and adorable mouse, but in this movie he shows heroic instincts, which we didn't really see a lot of in the first film. And this mainly approaches at the end of the movie, where he refixes his old airplane that broke when he's on the garbage barge, and he pretty much flies around New York to go stop Falcon and save Margalo, which purifies his bravery and cleverness as a character. And in terms of animation-wise, it's all good. It's perfectly good. Like, Stuart and the bird look realistic, and they don't look all buggy cow-eyed like a lot of CGI atrocities based off kids shows after this said, like with Garfield, Alvin and Chipmunks, Michael Bay's Ninja Turtles, the Smurfs. No, this was actually back when the CGI live-action designs were actually done right. Or they actually looked like actual animals. Here, when Stuart actually looks like a mouse. And acts like a mouse at times. There's even another perfect message in this movie about silver lining that Fred and Stuart talk about, which is this perfect little scene between them. And you definitely feel the bond the whole family has with Stuart in that very moment. where Fred tells him that George has a friend and that Stuart should find one now himself. And there's even plenty of funny moments in the first half of this movie, like when Stuart's playing on a soccer team with George, and then George accidentally kicks him with the ball and he's screaming at the camera, or when Stuart accidentally starts up that model plane and flies it all over the house, and then of course George and Will hear the plane going off, and they pretty much try to find a way to stop the plane from flying, and Frederick of course hears all the noise and wonders what's going on. It's like, and George and Will are like, oh, nothing, Stuart's just flying in the house. And of course, just Fred seemingly just ignores it, but then quickly seems to get a bit of a surprise reaction. It's like, flying in the house! I forget what George says after that, but I think it's like, at least he's inside so nothing bad can happen. But then of course Gina Davis's character then comes home with this bouquet of flowers, and then Stuart's plane leaves the house, clashes into Gina Davis's character's flowers, and the plane nearly hits some nuns in Central Park, and then it crash lands and it has to go in the garbage the minutes they find the wreckage. And while, yeah, Monty didn't really learn his lesson in the first film, he does have a slightly reformed cameo, after he was technically a minor antagonist in the first film, so where he kind of tells him both Stuart Snowball about Falcon here and where he resides, and so yeah, like throughout the film I experienced the feeling of bonding with the characters here. And it was definitely a good way to learn about the whole meaning of silver lining. And now when it comes to the character of Falcon is a very great villain too. Falcon is literally Margalo's guardian who teaches her to steal household objects and he notices her friendship with Stuart and makes her steal the family ring or he'll kill Stuart. And when she does so, you literally can see the guilt on her face. And her guilt just worsens after she saves Stuart's life when they think the ring went in the sink drain and Stuart ended up slipping because he wanted to go get the ring since they thought it was in there. And then when Stuart notices Margalo's missing, he has George make up this lie about him being in a school play so him and Snowball can go find Margalo all over New York. And they get directions from Monty. Then Stuart arrives at the Pushkin building, and in this pretty much heartbreaking moments. And yeah, this kind of seems like a bit of a liar revealed cliche where he finds out the truth about her and Falcon, but Margalo actually considers Stuart a friend, and he tries to get her to come with him. So I like how they could have once the third act split up cliche or the liar revealed cliche. No, they don't actually do that stupid crap in this movie. For once, there's no stupid any of that. Because I hate those cliches. Stuart's actually not all mad when he finds the truth. There's no moping and doping. And he actually tells Margalo to come back home with him. But of course, sadly, Falcon is mad at hearing this and drops him onto the street. But thankfully, a garbage truck does prevent his deadly fall. But of course, Margalo didn't see that so she thinks he's died. And when Snowball comes up the building to find him, he also then believes he's died. And when he hears the news, he's actually surprisingly devastated by this news. And this was the same cat that actually hated Stuart at first, but grew to accept him. So it's nice to see Snowball really changed as a character here. In the first film, Snowball probably wouldn't have really cared at all Stuart died before he realized his selfishness, but yeah, he doesn't not even crack a joke during that moment. So that was nice. And of course, let's not forget the final showdown sequence at Central Park is really fun to watch, where after Stuart fixes his plane, saves Margalo, and flies through the park with Margalo aside, Falcon gives chase, but he loses them while the little family follow them in a taxi. And of course, he has Margalo get out of the plane and decides to face Falcon himself and stop running. Here, so this really cements Stuart's character developments, where him and Falcon have this huge little approaching showdown with each other, and Stuart then uses Miss Little's ring to reflect the sunlight at Falcon to blind him, which was a very clever idea, and then using a handkerchief as a parachute. And the attack works, and the plane just hits and breaks for good, hitting Falcon. And then, of course, Falcon now lost all his feathers, falls out of the sky and into a garbage can Monty's scavenging in as he's looking for food. And we can presume he was eaten by Monty. And then one other scene I love is definitely how the movie ends. Margalo and Stuart return home, and then sometime later, following Margalo finally no longer being free, no longer having to work with Falcon anymore, she sees the birds are beginning to migrate for winter. And now, but Stuart tells her to go migrate as she's now free. And you can kind of tell Margalo seems a little hesitant about wanting to migrate, as means in which she'd have to leave Stuart's. But Stuart tells her to do it, and it wouldn't change a difference. It's a very heartwarming moment there. And it's bittersweet to see Margalo leave Stuart and finally be able to migrate after Falcon never let her do so. And Margalo even bids the little family farewell with their greeting little high, little low. And then she leaves with the other birds to migrate south. And Stuart now knows the silver lining is that Margalo will be back after the winter ends, so they won't be apart for long. And of course, it's very nice to see Martha finally speak her first words, which was "Bye, Birdie." And the littles are very amazed to see her finally speak. And of course, they go back inside, and they get the sunset over New York, which is beautiful. And then Celine Dion's song plays over the closing credits. A perfect wrap up to the movie right there. And it honestly feels like a good wrap up to the story right here. Originally, there was going to be, during 2019, there was supposed to be rumored talks of a John Hughes style reboot that would follow the book more. Thank God that shitty idea of a movie did not happen, because it would probably be crap, and it would probably be disrespectful to John Hughes' legacy. If that movie did happen, I think John Hughes would probably be rolling in his grave. Literally seeing his movie's tone get put into a shitty reboot. However, I can agree with some nitpicks here. First off, the movie is kind of only 78 minutes long. The first one was kind of a perfect 84 minutes, so I feel like maybe 89 minutes would have been fine. Likely just to see more scenes of Stuart and Margalo's friendship fleshed out a little bit more. And while I don't mind him as a character, I feel like Will just doesn't really contribute much to the story. He's just kind of there to be this friend for George, and that was it. And also, I kind of feel like in this one, the little parents kind of neglect George a lot. And they even acted a little too harsh on him when they found out about his lie about Stuart going to a play. All because he told a lie to them for the first time. I get George lied to you guys, but this is only the first time he did this. And they seem like they act like George did this many times, even though this is supposed to be the first time he's lied to them. And when they find out about his lie, Frederick even acts a little hard on George. When George asks if he's in trouble, and he replies no, and that he's in actually big trouble, he grabs his shoulder and actually literally yells it at the poor guy's face. Come on, dude. Yeah, I get George lied to you guys, but this is the first time he did so. I don't think you really needed to be that extreme, and they're not even extreme on Stuart for running off. Here, that's kind of a bit surprising. And Stuart just kind of gets off scot-free for running away and making George lie. But it doesn't make me hate his character, but I really wish the little parents weren't so hard on George over a lie. Come on. Could have just given him a little warning, because this is the first time he lied to you guys, so don't need to act like he did it over hundreds of times. But these nitpicks don't ruin the movie for me at all. And I still think Stuart Little 2 is a very phenomenal sequel, and it was probably will always be the last actually good Stuart Little film, and probably the last good CGI live action movie. Because after this, we got a whole bunch of shit. And this movie did not even deserve to bomb at the box office. No, I think the problem is the marketing. The trailers made this movie kind of look corny. And And of course, they released it probably the worst time possible. They released this during the summer of 2002. The summer. That year, that whole time in 2002, we already had Spider-Man. We had Star Wars Attack of the Clones. We had the first Scooby-Doo movie. We had Lilo and Stitch. Some of these probably still played really strong in July. Yeah. They probably... And of course, July also had Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines. So, yeah, you guys... Sony picked a really stupid time. Oh, wait, no, Rise of the Machines 2003. But those other releases I mentioned were definitely 2002. So I feel like Sony just picked a really shitty time to release this movie. Had it maybe been to December 2002, it would have been slightly more profitable. Maybe still not as much as the first one, but I still think it would have been a slightly more profitable had it been released in November, December 2002. Kind of like the first one did. It would still get crushed by Two Towers, but it would probably be decently profitable. Slightly. And then maybe we could have had a proper third one, where he sees Margalo again. Right here, and then Stuart would have to deal with growing up. Like, I would have loved to see that as a third film a lot more than that shitty direct-to-DVD animated film we had. Like, we could have had an actually good third film. About Stuart having to actually grow up, and eventually, like, how Stuart would probably have to deal with either high school or college. Here. Those wouldn't have been bad. But in the end, Stuart Little 2 is still a perfect watch and buy sequel. It's even better than the first movie. For fans of the first one that want to see more Stuart and actually see Margalo on the big screen. Anyways, that's it for my review of Stuart Little 2. If you're wondering how I can rank Stuart Little 2, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you want to see the plot of the book be adopted a bit more, but also love the first film, then I would recommend watching and buying this movie for your collection for sure. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Stuart Little 2, I'm going to give Stuart Little 2 an 8.5 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for Stuart Little 2. So, yeah, I finally got through that Underrated Gems duology. When I do eventually return to Underrated Gems again, we'll be doing another family movie duology, and this was for one in the 80s. And we all know this duology was about a robot who got struck by lightning and became alive. Yeah. When I return to Underrated Gems, whenever I do, the Short Circuit films will be the next Underrated Gems duology. But until then, guys, that'll be it for this Underrated Gems episode. Thank y'all for watching. If you like this and want to see more, don't forget to like and subscribe to Don G. Corleone.